What is going on, everybody? It is Saturday night, and it is time for another NBA Live Before Lock. Tonight, we're sponsored by PrizePicks, and also, I'm joined by Ryan today, so pretty excited to have Rinpack here to break down the showdown slate for me. I think it's always a nice little treat when we get Ryan on the show, especially if it's anybody other than Eric. But when we get Ryan here, I love it. Nothing makes me happier. So as you guys come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like I said, we're sponsored by PrizePicks today. We're going to be talking about them a little bit more as we go, but one of the many reasons that you guys should be signed up at PrizePicks if you are not already is because if you sign up using our link, not only do you get up to a $100 bonus on your first deposit, you can find that link right below in the description box, and it's going to be thrown into the YouTube chat as well. You're also going to get yourself one free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. So all of the tools, all the projections, all the ownership projections we have for every single DFS sport, that is going to come when you sign up at PrizePicks using the link that we have below. Ryan, what's happening? It's been a couple weeks since we did one of these on a Saturday because there was no games last week, I believe. So we've got some NBA playoff catching up to do, but how are you doing?
Doing well. I'm pumped to see what Jimmy Butler has done against Boston. I'm pumped to see what Denver is doing to LA. And I'm excited to see if Denver can go up 3-0.
And, I think we should do a little bit of a recap because people want to hear me give positive feedback and positive praise to my arch rival, Jimmy Butler. And Grant Williams shouldn't, as somebody who's personal experience, you don't rattle the cage of Jimmy Butler. But now, all that said, did you watch the game last night, by the way?
Yeah, I mean, Grant Williams, you think, is really the stopper. I love Jimmy Butler pretty much ever since they headbutted all the way till the post game. He was just laying it down and letting Boston know no one on their team's going to stop him, and no one has stopped him all playoffs long. It's just been pretty amazing. He's kind of giving the middle finger to you right in your face. Jimmy Butler's been that guy. He's been pretty impressive. Does he have it in him to take him to the finals? He's 2 games away. I don't know if he has 4 more wins in him after that, but it'll be very interesting to see if he can pull off a chip.
So one thing that I wanted to say about last night's game, and also Jimmy Butler's been so good, and I think people I want to make it known that Jimmy Butler's been really good, and I agree that he's been really good. I don't want people to think that I'm dodging talking about Jimmy Butler because of how well he's been playing. There is a narrative from last night's game with the Grant Williams stuff that I don't totally agree with. And I was talking about it with the Jacob producer before the show. There's been this narrative Grant Williams fired up Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler's been fired up since game 1 of the postseason. He's been torching everybody. I don't really think Grant Williams getting in his face is what set Jimmy Butler up. I think Jimmy Butler was going to go off no matter what, given how he was playing last night. Now, with that said, massive mistake, in my opinion, by the Celtics to play Grant Williams number 1 as long as they did, and to have him guarding Jimmy Butler. It was clearly not working out in their favor, and they just kept Grant Williams on Jimmy Butler for what felt like 6 possessions too long when it was apparent that it was not working for the Boston Celtics. So Boston just has a way to give away some of these games late, and the Heat have had a lot of good comebacks over the course of the playoffs. So how live do you think the Celtics are to come back into the series?
They are. They're fairly live. I mean, we've seen. I think there was a team. I want to say maybe 5 or 6 years ago that lost the first 2 road games and won 4 in a row. I forget who. I'm sure producer Jacob is channeling his Elias Sports Bureau behind him, and he's gonna come back with us with that answer. I think Boston has a chance. I mean, you have a chance until you don't. Expect 46, 48 minutes from Tatum and Brown next game, and one of the best rumors is Brad Stevens is going to fire Mazzulla and step in as head coach. I think I'm all for it.
It's Mazzulla kind of got put in a shitty situation just in terms of preparation, right? Because he had to step in for Ime Udoka, but obviously inherited a really good roster. But the general public consensus has been that Mazzulla hasn't done the best job. Do you think he actually might get fired if they lose the series the way it's going? His first year as head coach, he goes to the Eastern Conference Finals, and is that going to get him booted?
That's like the inner David Blatt, right? That's what happened to David Blatt. Took him to the finals, had the lead in the finals, and he's gone. I think NBA coaching turnarounds has been quite wild, and I think it's hard, really causing these teams to not stay relevant for a while. I really love that Denver stuck with Mike Malone through the ups and downs, and I do think continuity can really pay off with these coaches. And Spoelstra is obviously the easy guy to pick on. He's been a great coach for almost a decade plus now. And I think continuity is really important. I think Steve Kerr has shown it too. Yes, it's a lot of recency bias with teams that are doing really well, but There's a reason why these teams are constantly getting home court advantage in the playoffs more times than not, and finding a way to win in the playoffs as well. Just making those in-game adjustments. Missoula had a really interesting post-game conference in the Sixers series where he challenged the media saying, you guys aren't going to ask me what adjustments were made out between games 1 and 2 because they won game 2. And I think like that back and forth with the media is not going to really help his cause. But I don't think he's going to get fired. I don't think Brad Stevens is the guy to have a short lease. Like that would be the third coach in 3 straight seasons, right? It went Stevens, Ime Udoka, and then Missoula, right? I think Ime Udoka only had 1 season and then chose to sleep with some colleagues, and there's that.
Yeah, so Ime Udoka, who quickly finds himself back in the NBA now, going to be coaching the Houston Rockets. But one final recap from last night. So what is your expectation for the rest of the Heat Celtics series going forward? Do the Celtics come back? Do they just fold and get swept by the Heat? If I was just putting you right now on the spotlight saying you have to tell me who wins that series and in how many games after the Heat are up 2-0 and took 2 games from Boston in Boston, who are you picking and how many games?
Yeah, I think it's really tough. I think Spoelstra blowing a 2-0 lead certainly on the table, but I think he's a really good coach from preventing that to happen. I do think Boston can make it a series somehow. I do think the Heat take it in 6. They have to win 2 of the next 3. It's really interesting. In the NBA playoffs, a lot of times before people would say whoever has the best player in the series would win a game 7. I truly think if you have the 2 of the best 3 players in the series, you should be like a really good chance to win. I do think that's how like ball dominant these usage players are, high usage players. In the Miami-Boston series, do you agree that Miami has 2 of the best 3 players at any given point on the court? Does it go Butler, Tatum, Bam, or any? I mean, Tatum and Butler are pretty interchangeable in my opinion, but based on the first 2 games, it's clearly been Butler. But the difference between Bam and Jaylen Brown is very, very slim if it's either one way or the other.
Yeah, I agree. I would say that, and I'm kind of curious where people sit on this. Like, do people think that Jimmy Butler is better than Tatum? Do people think Tatum is better than Jimmy Butler? Butler's having the better series, but overall, and people are going to start getting on me for this because of my beef with Jimmy Butler, but it shouldn't be a hot take to say Jason Tatum is better than Jimmy Butler, should it?
No. I think people love like hot streaks. People love streaks in like any given point. Like Jimmy Butler has run hot in the playoffs a couple of times, but don't forget Jimmy Butler didn't have success in the playoffs 2 seasons ago. He got waxed by the Bucks when the Bucks won. And then in the bubble, he was outstanding. And last year, he was really, really good as well. So I think we've seen playoff Jimmy Butler be more successful, but Jason Tatum's had a fair share of playoff success himself. I think head to head, I think Tatum will probably finish with a better career, but Jimmy Butler has accomplished quite a bit throughout his career so far.
So if I am going to rank the players in the series, how I view them in terms of value right now, I'm going 1 Jason Tatum, 2 Jimmy Butler, 3 Bam Adebayo, 4 Jaylen Brown. And Bam Adebayo, another one who I generally like more than the public does. He's so good and so valuable on defense that I really think that's something that gets overlooked when people talk about how good the Heat are. So to me, those are the 4 best players in the series and in that order. Would you change it up anyway?
No, I think there was a good stretch of the season where Bam, I always thought was very underrated in his ability to guard pretty much all 5 positions, can handle himself in the perimeter, excellent in the lane, taking those floaters. But Bam really struggled in the Milwaukee series. He was good enough for them to win. He was okay in the Knicks series. He was really good in the closeout game. But these first 2 games, Bam Adebayo has been awesome. I think he's been kind of their shining star. Yes, Butler was great in game 1, but the way Bam handled himself last night, amazing. I think Bam is definitely a better player than Jaylen Brown, where things are constricted now, but it's very close.
If I'm not mistaken, let me go look. Did Jimmy Butler make the All-Star game this year?
He's one of those guys who doesn't play the All-Star game type of guy.
So. remember the one year where he was just too hungover to play and he was like fairly popular in DFS contests? It's always so hard to get information and play some of those showdown All-Star game contests. But there was the one year that, by the way, he did not make the All-Star game this year, Jimmy Butler.
He was hurt. Remember, you were just clowning him for taking games off. So
yeah, no,
he was third team All NBA, right?
Yes, he made an All NBA team. Didn't make the All-Star game though.
That's all that
Yeah,
matters,
give me 1
honestly.
second. One thing that was yeah, he had that year. I can't remember what it was. It 2020 where yeah, he went out at night and he was too hungover to play in the All-Star game.
Well, I think it was even before that. I think it was, I want to say it was in LA, and Lou Williams was having an amazing year with the Clippers. And everyone thought Lou Will should be an all-star. And Jimmy Butler just chose not to play. And Lou Will was very salty because he's always been a six-man, never been like the all-star type of player. And he was like publicly sad that Jimmy Butler like was an all-star, chose not to play. Like, it's like, damn, I just wanted to play. I wanted to hoop in that all-star game.
Let's see. What year? Yeah, I can't remember. Neither here nor there. One other thought on Jimmy Butler. Been on my mind since this morning. Has this run in the playoffs, and then we'll start talking about tonight's game. Has this run in the playoffs cemented Jimmy Butler as a Hall of Famer? To me, the answer is yes.
Yeah. The Basketball Hall of Fame is encompasses everything. Jimmy Butler's won a gold medal, I think twice or once. He's won it for one time for sure. And I think based on that, I think he is certainly. I think he's a Hall of Famer. He's been awesome in the NBA. Been a winning player for the most part of his career. To circle back to earlier what we talked about, the Cavs were down 0-2 and won against these Celtics in 2018. I believe that game went to Game 7, and Jason Tatum stared down LeBron when he posterized him, and the game shifted at that point. Not to say that was a turning point, but I think LeBron saw that stare down and took care of business. But they ended up getting clapped by the Warriors regardless. But it has happened before. So.
And now let's start talking about tonight's game. We've got the Denver Nuggets taking on the Los Angeles Lakers. Denver held serve at home. They're up 2-0 in the series. Denver, one of the most difficult teams to beat at home, although on the road, they were below 500 team in the regular season. So it's a team that's definitely been different on the road versus at home. We've got the Lakers as a slight favorite tonight. Before we get into some of the DFS, who are you picking to win the game outright, Ryan?
Outright, I mean, Denver getting 5.5 points is very nice. I like taking Denver in the points. Darvin Ham got a lot of credit for making some adjustments. I truly think he owes Lonnie Walker a wet one by the end of the playoffs just because of that game. And if Lonnie Walker doesn't have that game, I think the Warriors find a way to win that series. So he hasn't made that many adjustments. The media loves praising the Lakers whenever they can. Based on that situation, I think Denver in the points makes a lot of sense. But I think the Lakers are going to go all out. I mean, you can't go down 3-0 at any point in these playoffs, especially a really good Denver team.
Yeah, I'm going to take Denver. Well, I like Denver plus 5.5. I'm also just going to pick Denver to win outright here. Like I said, the Lakers, I do expect them to hold a little bit of an advantage at home just because Denver had such stark home road splits this year. But Jokic still gets slept on by the public to me. And that's going to lead us into talking about some of the captains. But I really just think far and away at this point in everybody's careers, Nikola Jokic is the best player in this series. He's won back-to-back MVPs coming into this year before Joel Embiid won. And then also he's just been incredible in the playoffs. And a lot of people have held this narrative going to the postseason that, Jokic isn't a good playoff player. That hasn't been the case in the past. They haven't won games necessarily deep into the playoffs, but a lot of that has to do with Jamal Murray's been hurt. Michael Porter Jr. has been hurt, and you just kind of get Jokic out there by himself. It's been unfair, in my opinion, for people to say Jokic is not an MVP type caliber player because of a lack of playoff success when you consider some of the players he's been playing with. Now that he has a better team around him, I mean, we're seeing how good Jokic is and that he really could put up these kind of numbers in the playoffs. But starting with DraftKings, Ryan, and then we'll talk about FanDuel afterwards. What do you make of Jokic as a captain play today? On DK, he's projected for 24% ownership in the captain spot. Anthony Davis at 17%, LeBron James at 10%. Do you think the ownership on Jokic is warranted at 24%? Would you be apt to be overweight to him at the field or underweight at that kind of number?
I mean, yeah, Jokic can lap the field and be the highest scoring fantasy player by 25 points. We've seen it time and time again throughout the regular season, even in the playoffs. Game on, yes, Davis was within him, but I mean, when a guy puts up 80 points, you're going to need that half multiplier salary, not the fantasy point multiplier. It worked out that game. But with that being said, I'm going to go a bit under the field on a guy like Nikola Jokic. 12.8 is a very, very expensive captain price tag, utility price tag for him. 19.2 at the captain price tag. You're going to have to be like playing like, I don't know. You're going to have to play, you're really playing a bunch of scrubs. Like to build really good Jokic captain lineups, I feel like you're gonna have to jam in two 1K players who might not even touch the court at times, and that's just not, I don't think, great. And I think there are many pathways where Jokic isn't the highest scoring player on the slate. You see guys like LeBron and AD lay it down and be really good captain options instead of Jokic. It's just a salary thing. I think I need that salary that I save with going down to guys other than Jokic. That could be a Jamal Murray, who was outstanding last game. LeBron James, Anthony Davis certainly have huge upsides as well. That's kind of where I stand. I'm not willing to go get to that much of Nikola Jokic at the captain spot. I think getting under that is my preference. But like I said earlier, Jokic could be the highest scoring player by 20, 25 points, and you're going to need him at the captain spot.
He could also, because we've already seen it in this series, and FanDuel's a different story. We're going to touch on that in a second. We've also seen in this series, though, like you referenced, game one, he scores 1 million fantasy points, way more than everybody else, and he still wasn't the optimal captain just because you needed some of those salary savings from Anthony Davis in game one. But when we talk about FanDuel, and the salary becomes different, right? Because there's no 1.5x salary to go along with the 1.5x multiplier. So when you look at the FanDuel slate, we have Jokic projected for 42.6% ownership in the MVP spot. Then you got AD at 27%, LeBron James at 18%, where we care more just about the total overall fantasy points. And of course, the ownership, we don't have to worry about the salary multiplier. How apt are you to be willing to get away from Nikola Jokic at the MVP on FanDuel? Or are you just going to ride with him at the MVP and differentiate elsewhere?
Yeah, I think I'm more likely to ride with him. 17.5 here. Certainly doable. I certainly think right now, the way things stand, the FanDuel single game is better than the DraftKings showdown, especially when these two teams play, because I really think it's a bad game when you can win with a 0 in your lineup at any point. I just don't agree with the concept of a game where part of your team can have a 0 and you can win the contest. I truly think DraftKings showdown needs to change the NBA salary floor, but that's why I prefer the FanDuel single game a little bit, just because I do think if you were to go away from Nikola Jokic, it certainly worked out last game, and you went to Jamal Murray. That probably happens. We saw that outcome happen, maybe happen 6-7% of the time out of 100, and we had one of those last time out. Here, the other guys have great ceilings as well. LeBron James and Anthony Davis certainly could outscore Nikola Jokic. I don't know. I want to say maybe 20-25% of the time combined, at least at the minimum. Versus Jokic, they're home. They're 5.5-point favorites. So I'm willing to get away from it a little bit. But to get away from Jokic completely in my lineup, it's risky. But it worked out last time. But I still think Jokic is definitely worth having in your star option if you're not playing him in MVP.
And talking about the other options now, we get to Anthony Davis and LeBron James. LeBron had a really good fantasy game a couple of days ago, but is it just me, or did it did visually appear to me, at least, like he's lost a little bit of a step? He's still capable of putting up really big games, but there was something that was a little, like, he looked a step slower. There was a gear he used to be able to go to that he wasn't quite able to get to. There was big shots where he had the opportunity to either tie the game late or take a lead that he wasn't able to knock down. It didn't feel like we were seeing the same LeBron James from previous years. Now, with that said, like, there was still a big fantasy game there, but I do somewhat question the ceiling of LeBron James at this point in his career, just because we haven't really seen it in the playoffs. And I keep thinking that there's this other gear he's going to go to and he's saving himself, and then it never really quite shows up. So is it crazy for me to not be really all that interested in LeBron James at this price point relative to the other pay-up options?
No, I mean, think about it, why LeBron James might not be able to get that gear. Everyone says age, but he did come back from an injury where, let's say if the Lakers weren't in the playoff hunt, I think they shut him down type of situation. He did, I think, go to Germany, get a little plasma injection and come back. And then he tweaked the foot again in the game yesterday. He played through it. I know there's two really like lowlights for LeBron James that we're not used to. Him missing a wide open. He was trying to do a reverse slam dunk. He's trying to get flashy, and he did that dunk, I believe. There's a famous Top Shot of LeBron doing that dunk, that same pose, but he blew it this time. And I think it was to honor Kobe, if I'm not mistaken. I think he passed, like, there's something to honor Kobe when he did that dunk. And then the other one is he blew that layup where I thought if he didn't have to pull off a reverse, he could have just gone straight up and put it in. It just seems like those couple plays, and everyone thinks LeBron lost his step. I do think he's not fully 100%, but I do think compared to Anthony Davis and LeBron James, Anthony Davis has a much, much higher ceiling. So he would be my preferred Laker captain option between the two. But let's never discount LeBron James. I mean, every time we try to say he's dust, he comes back and lays it down on us.
Well, to be clear though, I'm not saying he's dust. I'm saying
Yeah.
like if he used to be a 10 out of 10, he's like a 9.5 out of 10 now.
Yeah. 9.5 LeBron James is still arguably the best player on the court more nights than not. But like you said, I don't think he is per se Cleveland 2.0 LeBron James, nowhere near that, let alone the bubble LeBron James. That's probably like the tier end of his prime. And he's just a much different player, not very aggressive anymore. We don't see those fadeaway jumpers anymore. A lot of things that we're accustomed to seeing LeBron doing, he's just not doing them as frequently as much. He is really maximizing the roles of other players on his team, which has worked out. But it's when Anthony Davis is hanging around the wing in the corner for a three, that's not the best way to do it.
And then the other thing too is about the age. I kind of think the injuries are part of the age,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because do you remember how indestructible LeBron used to be, where he would horribly roll his ankle and be like, "Oh, that's like a 3 to 4 week injury," and then he would like tie his shoes tighter, and that would somehow make his ankle recover. So he had like this insane recoverability when he was younger, and it just doesn't really seem to exist quite the same level. So if I'm just looking at the top pay up options in this game, and there's three guys on a tier of their own in terms of pricing. It's Nikola Jokic, Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and I'm just less apt to play LeBron compared to the other ones. I have a lot more interest in Nikola Jokic and Anthony Davis. If LeBron ends up being the highest scorer in this game, so be it. But I like the other two guys in Jokic and Anthony Davis a little bit more, at least than LeBron today. So one other thing too, let me see. We haven't gotten the starting lineup yet, correct? Just double check.
No, you expect the Japanese Jordan to start?
That's what I'm bringing up, is because this is going to make a pretty big difference in terms of who we're looking at for value and who we're willing to pay up for. We saw Rui once again have a pretty good game last time out. And do you think we could see him start over Vanderbilt? I was surprised to see Vanderbilt in the starting lineup last game. My gut feeling is that we see Rui end up in the starting lineup over Vanderbilt.
We certainly could. Part of me also thinks I think Darvin Ham feels very comfortable watching Rui come off that second unit, give that energy against a piss poor Denver second unit. I think those are multiple reasons why I think they're continuing to bring Rui off the bench. And he's made an impact that way. I don't know how they practice or anything, if they're practicing with Rui and their set place to start the game. If Rui's involved, there's probably a lot of reasons why Rui isn't starting. He's been by far made a much greater impact and positive impact than Jared Vanderbilt has, especially on the offensive end. And yeah, I would put a 40% chance Rui starts, but I still think there has to be a couple of reasons why that we're not aware of why Rui's coming off the bench. I truly think his impact is much greater off the bench just because he's going up against guys like Jeff Green, Christian Braun, and Rui's standing out in that type of presence. It's been really impressive to see what Rui does. Does he keep up the field goal efficiency the way he has? Definitely not. It's definitely going to regress to the mean. I think it's 40% chance Rui starts, 60% he doesn't. There has to be some reasons why he has cracked it. He didn't crack it after game one. He was outstanding in game one. And he was even better in game two. As soon as he missed his first shot, the Lakers lost the lead and lost the game. It's just pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, and I assume we should be getting that starting lineup fairly soon. That's why I was just double checking to make sure that hadn't come across the timeline and I hadn't missed it while we're starting the show, because the game starts in 36 minutes and I'm pretty unsure who we're going to see starting for the Lakers today, because I think Rui is probably the most likely starter, but they could go with Vanderbilt again. They could go back to Dennis Schroeder. There's a bunch of different iterations and is going to impact some of the value players that we like to get to. So we'll see when that comes, and we'll definitely address it. And 35 minutes to go until lock. If you guys have any questions for us, by the way, leave them to us in YouTube, super chats, or if you guys are in Discord and you're a premium platinum member over at Stokastic.com, one of the perks to get into our Discord channel, at me and Ryan and I could answer any questions that you have for the slate tonight. So we talked about the high price guys, talked about AD, Jokic, LeBron, but where does Jamal Murray fit into the picture for you? Because Jamal Murray looked fairly terrible for the first 3 quarters of last game. And then all of a sudden, the dude couldn't miss in the fourth quarter. I sent one tweet about how he's playing like trash, and I don't think he missed a shot the rest of the game. One thing that was funny too is my brother hadn't watched the first 3 quarters of the game. He comes downstairs into the living room and he asks me, what's going on? Who's playing well? Who's playing poorly? And I tell him, this is one of the worst Jamal Murray games I've ever seen him play. He can't make anything. And my brother then only watches the fourth quarter and just thinks I'm a total moron because he's like, this is like the best game Jamal Murray has ever played. Before today, where does he fit into the picture for you? Because you get a salary discount compared to Jokic, AD, LeBron, but for the season, he wasn't quite the level of fantasy producer of those guys. So where does he fit into your lineup builds?
He's right in there. I mean, Jamal Murray is outstanding. One of those other guys who can easily be the highest scoring player on the slate. We saw last game. Less likely that it happens this time around. He played all 24 minutes of the second half. My gut inclination is that doesn't happen. I do think the shot attempts at 24 can happen, but he was awesome. 10 rebounds from him seems unlikely. So the more and more I look at it, a lot of outlier stats that happened last game for him to have that eruption of 68 DraftKings points. I like going to him in the utility spot, not more so the captain spot. I do think we might get a lot of recency bias pictured into with Jamal Murray at the 44,700 captain price point on DraftKings. Not really interested to going to him in MVP really over there on FanDuel either. 4,500 price tag over there. So I like going to him in the star or pro option. I definitely think that's on the table for him to knock off on FanDuel. Where things get really interesting with Murray is like, is he going to be the lead usage guy? When he's sharing the court with Jokic, Jokic didn't score in the fourth quarter, which is absolutely bizarre, and they won that game. The only two people I believe who scored in that game in the fourth quarter, I believe Porter and Murray were the only guys, and I think Bruce Brown had a dunk at the end or something. Yeah. So I don't think Murray's set up to repeat that performance. But at utility price point, he's still kind of cheap at 9,800, where I'm certainly getting to him in my lineups today, or maybe just around the field, looking at the latest ownership projections.
Yeah, so let's see. I have him 11% in the captain spot in the last run I did. So a little bit overweight to the field. But, once again, some of this is going to change whenever the starting lineup comes out for the Lakers, because I currently ran lineups assuming that Vanderbilt is the starter, but I have zero clue if that's actually going to be the case. So, hey, Lakers, help us out here. Give us a starting lineup because we kind of need that sometime before the game ends up starting. But let's also go back over to FanDuel and talk about some of the multiplier spots, because we've talked about the high-end guys for DraftKings purposes. But for FanDuel now, when you're looking at the star spot, when you're looking at the pro spot, we're going to be prioritizing in those spots where we know that Jokic, AD, those are some of the guys we're really honing in on the high end there. When you start to look at the pro spot on FanDuel, is there anybody that stands out to you as being under-owned there?
In the pro spot on FanDuel, yeah, I think it's Aaron Gordon. Now, Aaron Gordon is like showing some flashes of Ben Simmons right now. He's scared to shoot the ball, and that shouldn't be the case. Like Aaron Gordon is a very talented, aggressive player in the paint. I think he should be attacking the basket. He's playing a lot of minutes. I love that he's playing a lot of minutes, 39 minutes. There are multiple ways where he can pay out that price point. He has not been really active in the steals and blocks area of the last couple of games. I expect that to improve as the series progresses, and I'm really counting on those. The rebounds have dropped quite a bit since the Phoenix series, but I think Aaron Gordon has upside just because of the minutes he's playing, and I like that price tag quite a bit. He just makes things fit. He's 8,500. I know you're saving 2,500 off of Michael Porter Jr. I want to say they have similar ceilings just purely because of Porter's inability to sometimes play defense. Foul trouble we saw last game. Porter does take a lot more shots than him. That's where I do think the projection favors Porter in any raw point setting. But the value setting over there on FanDuel, I really like getting to Aaron Gordon in the pro spot. You're really going to be competing against guys like Austin Reeves, KCP, Porter Jr., D'Angelo Russell. I really like going to Aaron Gordon. I do think that ownership is going to be a tad lower than we expect. And I think getting above the field on a guy like Aaron Gordon makes a lot of sense. I do think we have yet to see that upside game, and kind of is due, in my opinion.
There's two players that are mid-range-ish type plays on both DraftKings and FanDuel that I think have upside that's not being recognized by the field. One is Aaron Gordon. The other one to me is D'Angelo Russell, assuming he sticks in the starting lineup. If Russell comes off the bench, which I think is possible, we could see Russell come off the bench today when that starting lineup comes out. But I I wouldn't say hot, like super high on Russell. I've just liked him more than the field because he hasn't been all that popular, right? He's projected for 32% ownership on FanDuel. We've got on DraftKings 31% ownership for D'Angelo Russell. When the player pool is so condensed with players that are, both teams are running short rotations. There's only so many guys to choose from. Of the players who are lowish owned, I think Russell and Gordon are the two guys that have the most upside that are kind of getting overlooked. Now, the downside is also fairly apparent. These guys have been really high variance players in the playoffs. Russell has been playing himself off the court in some of these games at times with some of his inconsistency. But I agree with you on Aaron Gordon. I feel the same way about D'Angelo Russell. I brought him up the other game as well. And that's kind of what ends up happening when we're playing these one-game slates and I'm talking about the same players and the same matchups every other day. A good chance if somebody's low-owned one day and I like them and they're still low-owned the next day, I'm probably going to like him unless something changes. For example, like if Russell, like I said, comes off the bench, I wouldn't like him. But if he starts, I'm going to like him as a contrarian play for the same reason you just mentioned Aaron Gordon. We've seen games in the playoffs where D'Angelo Russell makes his shots, earns himself extra playing time, and has a considerable upside. Do you agree with me? And do you see D'Angelo Russell in some of the same ways you were talking about Aaron Gordon?
I do. And they're going to need his offense. And we've always bought into the theory role players play better at home. D'Angelo Russell had some outstanding home games in this series. I think the closeout game against Memphis, there was a first quarter, and I want to say game 3, he was outstanding against the Warriors. He's shown the ability to play pretty well at home in important spots. So I think I like your narrative behind Russell there. Yeah, I was very shocked the way Denver was targeting D'Angelo Russell in the media, letting them their offensive game plan was to target Russell. I was surprised they kind of leaked that in the media, and then it got personal between Bruce Brown and Russell all throughout that game. So there's kind of a game within the game there. I gotta like Russell's minutes, 30 minutes. They're gonna need that offense. Dennis Schroeder can't provide a lick of that at this moment, and clearly that offense is needed because they're not able to do anything with Jamal Murray, as Jamal Murray is eating on both of these guys. Might as well get a couple more buckets on the offensive end. Try to keep up with this Denver pace, in my opinion.
We just got the starting lineup for the Lakers: D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and Jared Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt sticking in the starting 5. So we are going to address that right here in a second now that we have that he's officially in the starting lineup. So we'll talk about the Lakers starters and then we'll break down some of our favorite projected props over at PrizePicks using the Pick'em Pro tool that we have over at Stokastic.com. But starting with the starting lineup that has Jared Vanderbilt now confirmed in, D'Angelo Russell also sticking in the starting lineup. I did have some worries that maybe he wouldn't start, but Vanderbilt as a value option, he was projected to be super popular last game, and people did not click his name. I think he was projected for north of 60% ownership, and he ended up coming in like 25% or something like that. And today it's in the middle. We've got Vanderbilt projected for 43% ownership on DraftKings. FanDuel, he is projected for just 14% ownership. Now that he's confirmed starting, he's been, I want to say hit or miss, but that would imply there's been hits for him in the starting lineup in the playoffs. He's really been more miss or miss as a fantasy option, but he provides salary savings that are hard to find in this game. So how are you going to approach Vanderbilt in large field tournaments?
I mean, it's so gross down there, right? He's in between the likes of Christian Braun, guys who are actively in the rotation. Yes, we did see 3 minutes of Reggie Jackson last game and about 40 seconds of Tristan Thompson, but Vanderbilt's going to get the start, 2,200, and he's between the guys of Christian Braun, Jeff Green, and Lonnie Walker. He's starting. You're really hoping for a couple putbacks, a couple blocks in his minutes. He has performed awful in terms of a point per minute type of situation, but I feel more confident in Vanderbilt's minutes. He's similar to Jeff Green's minutes than Christian Braun and Lonnie Walker. Walker's minutes dipped a little bit last game. He's 2,200 getting the start. You're really just hoping for a couple steals, breakaway dunk, and just finding different pathways of him putting up hopefully 10 fantasy points might do it for you. Just because we don't have enough value to make anything really happen. You're going to have to kind of randomly pick one of those 1K guys yet again to really take yourself to the top, in my opinion.
And we do have the Denver Nuggets starting lineup as well. Same as usual. Murray, KCP, Porter, Gordon, and Jokic is the starting 5 for them. Now, he's so cheap, and we have so many good pay-up options in this game. Would you consider playing Vanderbilt in the captain spot on DraftKings just to enable yourself? Number one, you're going to be on a different build. He's not all that popular in the captain spot. But then also, you're going to enable yourself to jam in 3 of the 4 stars in the game if you have Vanderbilt at the captain. Is that something you're considering at all, or does he not have enough upside?
We haven't seen the upside. He certainly has an upside game. 25 captain point, 25 regular points will definitely do it. I don't think 15 does it. I don't think 15 does it based on running different game outcomes and range of outcomes here. His range of outcomes are 0 to 20. I don't think there's many pathways of him getting to 20, let alone 15 fantasy points that often. So I'm less inclined to do so. I think I'm sacrificing a lot of raw points in the captain spot. And Jared Vanderbilt goes out and puts up a double-double and burns me. I don't have him in the captain spot. I've done a lot of worse things. So I think I'm okay with fading Jared Vanderbilt in the captain spot.
And then on FanDuel, so FanDuel is going to be inherently different for Vanderbilt because the salary, just the structure, the way it works, you got Vanderbilt projected for fairly minimal ownership. Vanderbilt 14% owned overall on FanDuel. You don't need to play him, but are you willing to take chances? He is more fantasy friendly on FanDuel because of the potential for defensive stats. If
you're building many lineups, getting to some Vanderbilt can certainly pan out. You're really hoping for this the superstars to explode, that being Jokic, LeBron, AD, and Jamal Murray having big games. You're going to have to spend on somewhere. 6,500 opens a lot up to spend up for guys like Jokic at 17.5, 16K for Anthony Davis. Yeah, Vanderbilt can certainly rack up steals and blocks when given the appropriate minutes. His scoring definitely prefers him. 6,500. One of those things you're really hoping for double-digit fantasy points on both sides for him to pan out. Maybe you need a little bit more on FanDuel than you do on DraftKings just because of the game structure over there. But man, Vanderbilt's been really bad in terms of fantasy perspective. I'm sure he's been fine in real life perspective, but there's a reason why he's only playing around his minutes the last few games: 16 minutes, 10 minutes, 4 minutes, 11 minutes. Greg, what do you really think his minute ceiling is? I truly think we saw it last game at 16.
Yeah, probably somewhere around there. If everything goes perfectly for him, maybe 20, right? Because I do think his minutes have somewhat been influenced by the fact that Rui apparently never misses shots anymore. You were calling him Japanese Jordan before, but I mean, that puts him on par with Michael Jordan, which probably isn't fair because Michael Jordan never had this kind of efficiency. He wasn't shooting 100% from the field in these playoff games. Like he's an elevated version of Michael Jordan, Rui Hachimura right now. But I do think if Rui isn't making all the shots from the field, maybe we see 20 minutes from Vanderbilt. Because I do think that's one of the main reasons that we've seen the more minutes go to Rui is because he just isn't missing shots. I'll say this. I like being overweight to him on FanDuel at that kind of ownership.
We're talking about Vanderbilt, right?
Vanderbilt, yeah.
Yeah. On FanDuel, at that price tag, I think Josh coins the term, gets the honorary Keith Bogan, starts the first half and third quarter. I mean, I'm just so like Vanderbilt, you really are hoping for 15 fantasy points. Because then you pretty much will need him to jam in all these other guys. And yeah, I think he's fine to get to. I think getting with the field is appropriate, but be aware of the floor. It's literally 0 points.
It's very low. It's considerably low. He could legitimately pick up 2 fouls in the first few minutes of the game and not check back in for the rest of the night. It's within the range of outcomes. So very low floor, but relative to his price point, there's a little bit of a ceiling, and especially on FanDuel, where he's only 14% owned. I have him in, let's see. So I'm not going to have to change anything for this, but relative, I ended up getting to him about 20% of my lineups in the utility spot. So a little bit overweight to Vanderbilt in the FanDuel spot. I do like the kind of salary that he opens up. We've got a super chat here from DC24. We'll answer that, and then we'll talk a little bit about our favorite PrizePicks plays of the night. DC24 wants to know, do we think that Lonnie Walker is in jeopardy of losing minutes?
The one thing with Darvin Ham we've seen throughout these playoffs, he does really stick with the hot hand. We saw that happen in Game 4 with Lonnie against the Warriors. Then we saw it again in Game 5, I want to say, against the Warriors as well. There's games 3 and 4 at home. You played him 24, 27 minutes and then rewarded him for good play in Game 5. He hasn't played that well in this series. I don't know what his effective plus minus has been when on the court. Not something that really matters, but in short stints, Lonnie Walker seems like he's lost a step a little bit based on the series last time. He was out of his mind last series, but if he loses his minutes, it's just because they need to win. And we just see Austin Reeves potentially go from 36 to 40 minutes. Reeves is, I think, the beneficiary of Lonnie Walker not getting the minutes, and kind of trickles down to D'Angelo Russell as well. So jeopardy of losing minutes, I feel pretty confident that he's going to get to at least 10. And the minutes range of outcomes go from 10 to 20. Anything higher than that means Lonnie Walker is playing exceptionally well, or there's a serious amount of foul trouble among some of the starters for the Lakers.
I mean, the answer to me is definitely yes. It depends, like, what do we consider losing minutes? In game 1, he played 20 minutes. In game 2, he played 13, right? If he plays 13 again, do we consider that losing minutes? Then, yeah,
I think losing minutes from a perspective of what we saw in the last series. So now, yeah, he's already lost some minutes in my opinion. He's playing one, I think his rotations are a bit shorter. He's kind of got the quit plug, and I don't know how effective he is. And when he's on the court, obviously Lonnie Walker has the ability to knock down 3-pointers, where you get the 3-point bonus on DK. You're going to really need him to get you again to double-digit fantasy points, certainly in his range. But would you rather play 3,200 for Lonnie Walker or 2,200 for Jared Vanderbilt?
Vando for me. He's starting.
Yeah, I think so. You save $1,000 on this DraftKings Showdown slate. That's a lot. Like an insane amount of changes in your lineup can happen with those extra $1,000.
Are there any value plays you prefer to Vanderbilt on DraftKings? Where, I mean, you look at the players who, and we'll say anybody sub 3K. You know, your options are, well, we'll say 3,200 and below. So we'll include Lonnie Walker. So Vanderbilt, Christian Brown, Lonnie Walker, and Jeff Green. Those are like the 4 guys we expect to be in the rotation. Vanderbilt's my favorite of those 4.
Greg, call me crazy, but I think you might as well just randomly pick one of these 1K guys. Brick75 on his LOL shows just says go to random.org and just pick the random 1K player. I think we could do that right now. We can type in Reggie, type in Tristan, type in Peyton Watson, Zeke Naji, and we randomly pick a 1K player and just play him. I think that's how ridiculous the DraftKings Showdown slate is right now. You need that salary floor to jam in the studs like Jokic and Davis and LeBron. I mean, if it's just kind of what we need to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, and if you had to play some, let's say, because we've seen it multiple times pop up, and I know it's your least favorite thing about DraftKings is that we see, I don't know what, like 25, 30% of the playoff slates where somebody ends up scoring 0 fantasy points at 1K. Do you have a preferred option of a 1K player?
So last time I just randomly picked Malik Beasley. He was 5% owned. Malik Beasley hasn't seen the court in like outside a blowout run since the Grizzlies series, and I was shocked to see him at 5% owned. He was the highest owned guy out of the 1K player. I do think a lot of casuals just saw his average fantasy points per game, and it's like at 20. I think that's why he was the highest 1K owned player. And with that being said, I do think it's going to sound ridiculous. There's more Lakers fans that are casual fans. Therefore, I think a lot of the Lakers 1K players are going to be higher owned than the Denver 1K players. Just based on ownership, I prefer the Denver 1K players, that being Reggie, DeAndre Jordan, Vlatko, Zeke, or Ish Smith, one of those guys, because I think they're going to be a tenth of the ownership compared to the Lakers, just because I think more Laker casuals are picking their guys.
And we just got a super chat, by the way, from Aggressive Goose. So Aggressive Goose, gotta love some of the YouTube names. Aggressive Goose wants to know if we have any thoughts on the DK 2-game slate, Saturday, Sunday. Have you run lineups for that? I have not.
I can quickly run lineups. Give me about 10 seconds. I can get some lineups up.
And in the meantime, I'm going to check just our Discord channel to see if we have any questions that have come in through there. And yeah, we have one from Boss Bro who wants to know favorite pro play on FanDuel. For me, it is D'Angelo Russell, and before Ryan said Aaron Gordon, if I remember correctly.
I did say Aaron Gordon. Some solid plays on the 2-game slate over there. Taking a look at some guys who can work out. I like going to some of the Boston guys, being like Malcolm Brogdon or Marcus Smart. I do think a lot of those minutes are going to go up for them. If you want to take some chances on Jokic at 11-7, I think makes a lot of sense. I think there might be some enough value to get him in there. Two-game slates are very interesting. A lot of times in the past, when they used to run these before showdowns, I think a lot of the first day players were over-owned, and you would be really rewarded taking some chances, taking more aggressive stances on the game that happens the next day. You get more late swap flexibility. So there's kind of another game within the game over there with the 2-day slate over there for DraftKings.
Yeah, so if we look, so one thing that's going to make the 2-game slate kind of tricky is I don't know what Boston's going to do with their starting lineup. Just gut feeling. Do you think they start Derek White tomorrow? Do they start Robert Williams, or do they go some other iteration of the starting five?
So we did see Derek White start the second half.
Yeah.
So with Derek White starting the second half for Robert Williams, they lost the game. But I do think they need to start Derek White to just kind of keep up with Miami. So I think going to Derek White ahead of time could certainly pan out. And then giving the late swap flexibility, there's a bunch of guard options around that price range. So Derek White comes in at 4,100. He looks outstanding as is, regardless of starting or not. So I think going to him makes a ton of sense. You won't get that much roster flexibility over there with the Miami guys. I mean, 5,100 Kyle Lowry is there. I believe Gabe Vincent comes in at 4,600. So you have some late swap options as well. But Derek White at 4,100, regardless of starting or not, kind of looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, he's somebody, like you said, he ended up starting the second half. And I always think also with Boston, that trio of Malcolm Brogdon, Derek White, and Robert Williams, it's always a little bit of a rotation. And they're going to, I would like to say they're going to run with whoever's playing the best, but that's not necessarily what Joe Mazzulla does. It's just like he's going to randomly play one of them more minutes than the other. And it, based on the price point, I do like Derek White the most of those players for tomorrow. Potential for him to start. But like Ryan said also, just be ready to late swap tomorrow based on what the starting lineup is, because it is a little hard to know this far in advance what it's going to be. To me, though, pretty clearly, my favorite pay up option for the 2-game slate, it's Nikola Jokic.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty set in stone. If you don't want to play Jokic, I strongly advise taking some chances on one of the Lakers studs or Jason Tatum. I think spending up for Tatum makes a lot of sense. He's only 10 to expect 45 to 48 minutes tomorrow for Tatum, in my opinion.
We got
Davis is 9,900. I don't mind the $2,000 savings on a 2-game slate over there for tomorrow's 2-game slate.
We got a super chat here from Luke Stone. DK tonight, who is the best play at 1K to score in a garbage time blowout scenario? So he's building his lineup assuming it's going to be a blowout. If you are already anticipating a blowout, Ryan, so keeping that in mind, you're assuming a blowout. If it is that scenario, who would be the 1K player that you're picking in that kind of thing? Already building the lineup that's the scenario.
Gosh, just shoot me, I guess. I mean, I'll pick it. Some of the Denver guys, they're just much lower owned. If you just keep looking back at it, a lot of the Denver guys are low owned. Non-zero chance. Reggie Jackson has jumped Christian Braun in the rotation, maybe, but unlikely. I don't know. I think he got those minutes because there's a bunch of foul trouble kind of trickling on its way. Best 1K player, Lakers side, I'm going to say Malik Beasley again. I don't know. Yeah, Beasley or Troy Brown on the Lakers, and on the Denver side, I don't know. Zeke Naji and Reggie.
Zeke Naji's been my answer just because I feel like he's the next guy to get in line if somebody gets into foul trouble. But once again, I mean, we're really grasping at straws here, and we're answering the question just as it's asked, which is for a 1K player who scores the most in garbage time. I'll just say Zeke Naji because I've been saying him, but then ultimately none of these guys end up playing, and it kind of becomes a moot point of conversation. So that's going to be my answer for now. But I was going to say let's look at PrizePicks, but we just got another question in Discord, so I want to make sure we hit on that, and then we can hit on some of our favorite PrizePicks plays. But we've got Zach Attack says on FanDuel, Schroeder and Russell or Hachimura and Gordon at utility. Just because of the correlation, I prefer the Hachimura and Gordon combination than Schroeder and Russell together.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Just going back at the 1K plays, I mean, yeah, it's really difficult to stay just because we haven't seen any one of these guys be consistent. I advise you to play someone who's not injured. Don't play Mo Bamba. We got news that Mo Bamba is yet to be cleared, so don't play Mo Bamba. I think he'll be an option if you want to take some chances on. Woj is hinting at he might be an option to take on Jokic. Like, good luck with that type of situation. So, yeah, 1K guys. I mean, honestly, put them in a hat and pick two out. Pick one out. I don't know.
After game one, people thought the Nuggets were screwed because Rui Hachimura guarded Jokic for like 6 possessions. People thought that was the end of the Denver Nuggets. Ended up not being the end of the Denver Nuggets. So maybe they try Mo Bamba. We shall see. But getting over to PrizePicks, they are the sponsor of today's show. And like I said at the top of the show, guys, if you guys need more motivation to sign up at PrizePicks and just that $100 deposit bonus doesn't do it for you alone, you also get 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. But if you're in a state that has legalized sports betting, maybe you don't have access to PrizePicks, we do have a similar deal with BetMGM, where if you sign up at BetMGM using the link that we have below, that is also going to get you 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. It just requires a minimum $20 deposit over at BetMGM. You're getting a lot of value on that with the 1 free month of Stochastic Plus Platinum. If you or anybody you know has a gambling problem, call or text the number 1-800-GAMBLER. So I have our Pick'em Pro tool pulled up in front of me, Ryan, and other value for people if you guys are signing up for our Pick'em tool for the first time and use the link below, you could get up to 50% off on it, which means you get access to it for as cheap as less than $5. The number one prop that we have projected for today, under 7.5 assists for LeBron James. Earlier in the day, I did a video on today's slate night over 5.5 assists for Jamal Murray that's since moved to 6 assists, but we still have that projected decently well. Do you like LeBron under 7.5 assists, or is there anything else that's standing out to you in our PrizePicks projections?
In our PrizePicks projections, yeah, just taking a look at, I think, I do think the LeBron under an assist looks pretty solid. I also don't mind taking the over on Jamal Murray 6 assists. Why that could happen, we have him projected at 6.99 assists. Identical, 57% win percentage. Maybe the Darvingham quote unquote game adjustment is maybe trapping Jamal Murray and forcing the ball out of his hands a bit more, where that could potentially lead him to be more of a facilitator than an offensive scorer. So that's a pathway where I do think taking the over on Jamal Murray assists are certainly in play. Look, he's going to play around 40 minutes, 40 plus minutes if this game is close. So I think taking the over on his assists, just being in line with their projections, make a lot of sense.
Yep, that's where I'm at as well. It's hard to find a ton of value on these 1-game slates, but we got a couple of them that project decently well here in LeBron James under 7.5 assists and Jamal Murray over 6. So definitely ones that I think are worth taking a shot on. Now let's go back and look at the slate and try to wrap up any loose ends. And also speak now or forever hold your peace. Everybody in Discord, if you have a question for me, now is the time to go throw that in because we've only got a few minutes to go into lock. And speak the devil. Question comes in. Kenny Wayne 256 wants to know favorite ways to get different when crunching lineups on Fantasy Cruncher on a showdown slate like this. So one thing that I'm going to say is the easiest way, the absolute easiest way, is just leaving salary on the table. That's the simplest way to differentiate your lineups, especially on FanDuel. It is nearly, unless you're doing something batshit crazy, it is nearly impossible to build contrarian lineups on FanDuel that use all the salary. So leave some salary on the table, and that is one way to help you, Kenny. Do you agree with that, Ryan? Is there any other kind of advice you give to our friend Kenny? You're unmuted, by the way.
I think that's definitely a great option to leave money on the table as well. So I think it makes a ton of sense to do that. I think additionally, one thing to keep an eye on is if you're building one lineup, create a game narrative, game script. We do this in NFL Showdown. I think that it's very valid for NBA Showdown as well, of what that game narrative looks like. And I think having your own unique game narratives can certainly pan out.
Yeah, I think it's because I know he said specifically being contrarian. Let me just read it. Favorite ways to get different when crunching lineups. Like Ryan said, I think it makes a whole lot of sense to build certain rules just to, ideally, like before we got a question where somebody said that they wanted to play Schroeder and Russell in the same lineup. I would try to minimize the amount of lineups you have both of them together. So you do stuff like that, which won't necessarily make you different, but it is definitely going to make your lineups a little bit better correlated and give them more upside. And then also just leaving salary on the table. Really hard to find too much other stuff other than prioritize players who are lower owned. We're talking about Vanderbilt before only being 14% owned on FanDuel. Another way that's reasonable to differentiate your lineups is be overweight to players that are not projected for much ownership that have a path to upside. Like, don't just go ahead and play like 60% of Jeff Green because he's projected to be the lowest owned player on the slate. But if you get any of these guys that are, like mid 20% owned, maybe low 30%, like D'Angelo Russell, Aaron Gordon, we're talking about, that we know we've seen have ceilings over the course of the season, getting overweight to those kinds of guys also could help differentiate some of your lineups. But we've only got a few minutes left to go here until we get to lock, Ryan. Are there any players that we've not yet talked about that you consider to be really high priorities that you're aggressively trying to get overweight to the field to that we haven't talked about? If we've already hit on everybody, that's totally fine. But just want to make sure there isn't any loose ends that are, or any, just any loose ends that we haven't tied together yet.
Aggressively getting above the field on, I don't mind getting aggressively above the field on a guy like Aaron Gordon, like I said over there on FanDuel. I know he's not taking as many shot attempts as you like. I love the minutes, and I do think those minutes should pan out to fantasy points at some point in this series. So I'm going to take that aggressive stance with Gordon today. Austin Reeves, on the other hand, has been getting minutes over there in LA, and he's producing a ton of fantasy points. Seems like a solid last man in option. I don't mind going to Reeves. The minutes can even go up. There are many ways. He's done an excellent job on both ends of the court more times than not. Stayed out of foul trouble, which is really important for Reeves. Man, 36, 42, 39 minutes. He's been very, very impressive in this postseason, where he might be too expensive for the Lakers to retain. We'll see about that once free agency starts. But I think it's Reeves on the Lakers side of things, and then those are the two guys who I'm looking at.
Sure. And do you think are we going to see the Lakers do Austin Reeves the same way they did Alex Caruso and just say he's not worth the money and let him go somewhere else?
Two very different players, in my opinion. I don't know. It really comes down to I don't know what they're going to do with a guy like Malik Beasley, or they have a bunch of other guys who are kind of due.
By the way, sorry to cut you off. We just got 2 super chats right at the buzzer here, so I want to make sure we answer them. So one is from Malcolm Revamp. Who should he play in the pro spot for FanDuel cash? So if we're talking about a cash game, let's see. I'm gonna agree with Ryan and say Aaron Gordon. I know we're talking about him as a tournament play, but he's also picking up ownership in the pro spot. My highest projected lineups do have Gordon in the pro there, so I'm gonna say Gordon for cash in the pro spot. And then RADM says, just got here. Do you think Rui plays more minutes today? No, I think he's much more likely to play less minutes than more. He played so many minutes last game, and he's not starting. It's hard to see a scenario where he plays more than the 30 minutes he played last game.
Yeah, not only the 30 minutes, 8 of 10, 8 of 11, super, very, very efficient in those minutes given. Less likely that's going to happen, in my opinion. But look, Rui proved me wrong in game 2 in terms of the efficiency. But I think the minutes are anywhere between 20 and 30 is the ceiling. I do think 30 minutes was the ceiling we saw last game. I do think he gets around 20 at least at the minimum.
Yeah, so I think he's going to play significant minutes. He's a very good value play. But just per what the question is he going to play more than the 30 minutes he played last game? It's hard to make a case for that. He played 30 minutes after going 8 of 10 from the field in the game before he shot 8 of 11, right? If he goes 16 of 21 from the field over a 2-game stretch, and that's what he plays is 30 minutes, I think he's probably going to play like mid-20s minutes. I think that's the most reasonable guess for Rui today. Still a significant amount of minutes, still enough to make him a really good value play, but a little bit less than last game. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up here, Ryan? We're right about it, lock.
I mean, there are some wild lineup combinations out there. I don't know. This is going to be another whoever gets that last rebound 1K player, if they come in for blowout time or there's like a double-digit lead with a minute left, whoever grabs that rebound, I think is going to take home that first place.
And that is going to do it for us today, guys. If you have not done it yet, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Shout out to PrizePicks for sponsoring the show today. Hope you guys enjoy the game tonight. I hope you're having a great weekend. I'll see you back here on Monday.